benefits. We have talked about credit history and I've given us a fictitious story of Josh and his three friends, Daniela, Ronald, and Brandy. So, what is a credit card? A credit card is, of course, a card. Credit is a loan. So, it's a card that gives you some form of loan, if I will put it simply that way. But to give it a bit more detail is that it's a payment card where the money you're spending is offered by the card provider rather than taken from your bank account. So there are many card providers. It could be your usual banks, the Barclays and all those other HSBC and all those other big banks you hear of. It could be some other lenders, Amex, the Tesco. Very many companies will give you a credit card. So a credit card is a card just like the same card you were given when you opened the bank account that you're operating on when you paid your salary. But the difference is the money you use on a credit card is the money that belongs to the lender. It is not your money, it belongs to the company that gave you the card. Unlike your debit card, the card you use for your salary account or whichever other account you have, where it is linked to your bank account, and every time you spend money from that card, you're spending your own money. In a credit card, you apply for one, you're given an account, a standalone account. It is not related in any way to your regular bank account. And then you're given a card that has what they call a credit limit. So a credit limit is the maximum amount of money you can spend on that card. So the company will give you a card and say, for example, that the credit limit on this card is £2,000. So you cannot spend more than £2,000. That £2,000 is not your money. It is money belonging to that company. So having said that, most of the times, or rather, all companies will have an interest-free period. So when you're spending their money, you can spend it for a number of days without paying interest. However, if you've not paid after that number of days, then they start charging you interest. For a majority of companies, it's usually about 56 days, I think, 8 weeks or so. So long as you pay back before 8 weeks are over, then there's absolutely no interest you'll pay. So what are the benefits of using a credit card? I mean, somebody could argue, what's the point of taking somebody's money and spending it if I'm going to pay it anyway? I mean, I'd rather just use my own money. I mean, it's quite a logical conclusion, right? So if you think about it that way, there's no reason of getting a credit card. But if you think about the other benefits, which I'm just going to highlight, then you'll probably change your opinion. So the first real benefit for people who are new to this country is that a credit card will allow you to build credit history. Remember my story of Brandy, Ronald, and Daniela. Brandy is many of us who are new to this country, we don't have a credit history. If we ever need financing for something, and I use mortgage because many people eventually will want to own houses and take mortgages, then one of the things people look at is your credit history. So your credit card will give you an opportunity to build a credit history. So every time when you're spending on your credit card or you're borrowing, quotes and quotes, money from the company, you're building a credit history. If you're paying back during the interest-free period, you will never pay any interest on that credit. So it's essentially free loan, interest-free loan that you're getting, and then you're paying it back. And you can use this money for your daily purchases. You can use it for your bills. You can use it exactly the same way you would have used your own money. So actually, what personally I do is most of my transactions, I just use my credit card and then I pay back at the end of the month so that I don't have to pay interest. So the benefit I get in this is, I mean, it may just look like I'm transferring my money to the credit card, money, which is actually in reality that's what's happening. I'm just using money on the credit card and then I'm taking my money from my account to pay back the credit card. That's in reality what's happening. But the advantage I have over somebody who doesn't have a credit card is the person who's using the debit card only is not creating a credit history. While for me, I'm creating a credit history based on my use of the credit card. So every month on my credit file, there is evidence that, let's say, I borrowed or I used £400, for example, and I paid it back. So I look like Daniela in my fictitious story, the person who usually borrows and pays on time. While on the other hand, the person who only has a debit card and is using the debit card only will continue being like Brandy, the person you you might be a good person, but lenders are afraid of lending to you because they don't know you. You've never borrowed and they don't know whether you can pay back because there's no history of you paying back anything or borrowing anything. So that's the major reason why a credit card is beneficial, especially if you're new to this country. And if you look at it in the long run, it is also a way to help you to save money. Say again, taking to a mortgage example, once you've built a good credit history and you now want a mortgage 3 or 2 years down the line, or even 4 years down the line, with a good credit history, you'll be able to get affordable, more options of mortgage and less interest rates, and therefore, in that way, it will help you to save money. Unlike somebody who doesn't have a good credit history, who will eventually end up with very expensive mortgage and pay a higher interest than yourself. The second benefit is earning rewards. So some credit cards will offer loyalty points which you can redeem for discounts or I mean in restaurants, in shops, in or even air tickets. Some give you cash back, so if you spend a certain amount of money, they give you a certain percentage back. And they're very different loyalty award programs for very many credit cards. Not all give you rewards, I must mention. So this is not really a major benefit, but it still is a benefit. Of course, the third benefit is it can help you to finance your monthly purchases and payments. Sometimes you want something and you don't have the money right away, you can use your credit card. So long as you know that you will be able to pay it back in full before the interest free period ends, then that's a good way of a responsible way of using your credit card. I'm going to talk about using it responsibly in the next part of this talk. But having said all that, these are just three out of a long list of benefits. Of course, there are disadvantages, and one of the major disadvantages is some people forget use them irresponsibly. I'm going to talk about it next, not on how to use your credit card responsibly. So the main advantage I will think of for people new to the UK is that you can use a credit card to build a credit history, especially if you're thinking of getting a mortgage someday in the future. Thank you for listening to part two. In part three, I'm going to be discussing using a credit card responsibly and tips on what